sunshine outside, and just the gift of being able to worship you in this beautiful house of the Lord and be here with our church family and learn more about you. Please let my words flow with your message and reach everyone who needs to hear it today. In Jesus' name, amen. I'd like to thank you for the lovely music. That was so very nice. The children's story. I learned a lot about hummingbirds today that I didn't know. So today, my sermon today is called A Broken Road. And it's more of a testimony than it is a sermon. And it's about my life and my journey to Jesus. So I'd like to say, to start with a quote, is what I always like to do. So one of the things that we have to do, to understand ourselves, we must understand our past. Not to dwell on it, but to learn from it. One of my favorite quotes, I say this to my kids all the time, it's, those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. That is actually Winston Churchill from 1948, who's paraphrasing George Santayana. And he was a Spanish-American philosopher. I always thought it was just Churchill until I did some research on it. Our past has taught us many things. It's taught us about loss, about joy, about faith, about hope and love, compassion, and empathy. I'm going to focus today on faith. Faith is not always a straight line. For some people, you know, you're born into the church and you go to church every day and you've always had a relationship with God, and that's great for you. That's wonderful. I'm happy for people that's happened to. But some of us, it's a long journey to get to where we are with our faith. My faith journey was a broken road. I was raised in Owensboro, Kentucky, about 5 hours south of here, and I was in a Catholic church. I know, Ginger, IU, we understand. Me being from Kentucky, she always reminds me about IU. But I was baptized with, had the water poured on my head as a baby, had my first communion at 5. And that everything was hunky-dory until I was 7 years old. And my family was torn apart. After 25 years of marriage, my parents got divorced. And then I lived with my mother at first, and we continued to go to church. And every Sunday we were there. And then later on in my teen years, kind of rebelled a little bit, so I ended up staying with my dad. And when you're a teen in the Catholic Church, that's when you do your confirmation. And that's kind of you're dedicating your life to God. Well, I never did that because church wasn't important to my father. So I made it all the way through high school. Now, God was there. I knew he was there. I didn't really have a relationship with him yet, though. But he was always there, and he was looking out for me. After high school, I joined the Air Force. And then I embarked on a 22-year career in the military. Now, my first experience with the military was basic training. Basic training is where you get yelled at a lot. And a lot of people go to church during basic training. And it's not because they have a relationship with God, it's to get away from the training instructors for about 2 hours on Sunday. And that's how it was. The churches were crowded on Sunday, and like I said, that was just to get away from the TIs. But at first, once I graduated basic and I joined the military, a lot of my stories are about the military because the military is a big part of my life. But the first part of my military career, about the first 10 years, because I joined in 1991, it was like a regular job. I'd get up in the morning, I'd go to work. I'd do everything. I did a couple of little TDYs here. I went to Saudi Arabia. I went to, which that place is awesome. And then I went to, Norway and things like that. Then 9/11 happened. And I learned how brutal the world can be. like many of my brothers and sisters in arms, did multiple tours, including my wife back there. Did multiple tours in Iraq, doing convoy duty. Now, one of my favorite military quotes, and it's out there, a lot of people say it, there are no such things as atheists in foxholes. Everybody in a war zone is praying a lot. And every time we went out on a mission, before we would go on our mission, we would have the chaplain come in, and the chaplain would do the prayers, and we would all huddle in a big group and say our prayers to God to give us a safe travels through the war zone in Iraq and back to Kuwait. God was there. Did I have a relationship with him yet? I did not. I knew he was there. Now, many times in the military, you think you're invincible when you're young. And then things happen that put a mirror up to your face and you figure out you're not as invincible as you thought you were. And that happened my first tour in Iraq. We lost Peters to a roadside bomb. And that's the first time I thought about mortality and where I was going to spend eternity. So that kind of turned me back to God. Now, I experienced many things over there, and it changed me a lot. My son can attest to this. I don't like sudden noises or being surprised. I kind of get irritated when that happens. So, like I said, I didn't have a relationship with God yet, but I knew he was there, and he was looking out for me. Now, he showed me infinite patience all along the way. And being a father and having my children, I can't imagine the level of patience that it took for him to deal with me for the 22 years I spent in the military, and the amount of patience that I lack sometimes with my own children, So, but God sent me positive role models in my life, and he led me back to him. He showed me people that showed me what friendship was. I have lifelong friends. I talk to him maybe once or twice a month here and there, but Mike Steffen, if I need that man and I call him, he will be here in a heartbeat. That is my friend. He lives up in Alaska, but he told me what friendship was. He showed me what a functioning family looked like. And it taught me the kind of man that I wanted to be. Mike was not a church-going man, but he was still a good man, and he was kind, and he showed me who I wanted to be. So after all the tours in Iraq and all the tours in Afghanistan, God was still there, but I didn't have a relationship with him. So near the end of my career, I was still in Alaska. My wife, my future wife at the time, she came up on a 2-week annual tour. She's in the reserve, so they do like 2 weeks and then 1 weekend a month. She came up to Alaska, and that's where we met. And then for 2 years, we kind of burn up airfare going back and forth between Minnesota and Alaska to stay together. And then we started our family. After I think it was I retired. I always get this backwards, honey. I retired one day. There you go. So I retired from the military, got married and retired. Either way. We moved to Kentucky and we started our family. God was there. Didn't have a relationship with him yet, though. My wife, Faith, she was Seventh-day Adventist. I was kind of Catholic, I guess, at the time. And I didn't know what the Seventh-day Adventist Church was all about. But we had our son, Garrett, and we dedicated him at her home church in Minnesota. And I stood up in front of the church, and I stood up in front of God and in front of my family, and I promised that I was going to raise him in a Christ-centered home. I didn't know what that meant at the time, but I knew it was a promise I intended to keep. So when we talk about like Ellen G. White and you have Steps to Christ, everybody loves that book. I love that book too. It's fantastic. This was step one for me. Just being in that church and seeing how wonderful it was and standing up and dedicating my son to God. It was amazing. And it was step one. Step two was understanding what it meant to be a Seventh-day Adventist. I had no idea. I was like, they go to church on Saturday. That's strange. I haven't been, I hadn't ever had that in my life. I didn't know that the Sabbath was still something you kept because, like I said, raised Catholic. So we tried the Owensboro church. They didn't have any kids. So it was a really small congregation, and there wasn't any children in there. So I said, well, let's try one of the Evansville churches right across the river in Indiana. And we found the Evansville Seventh-day Adventist Church and Pastor Richard Norris. If you don't know, Richard Norris is the one that just retired up here at Plymouth, which is why I'm up here preaching now. Because our pastor is now a full-time pastor and has, 5 churches? So that little piece right there affected the rest of my life. So he like me, Pastor Norris, was raised Catholic. Every one of the elders in that church was raised Catholic. Is God directing my life? Every step of the way, he's there. Didn't have a relationship with him yet, though. He truly helped me understand the dogma that had been placed in my head when I was a child. And you don't know how ingrained that Catholic dogma is and the guilt until you have a mirror placed up to your face. Not that there's anything wrong with being Catholic. It's great, but that, I didn't understand. We didn't hardly ever read our Bibles when we were Catholic. Right? And I come into the Seventh-day Adventist Church, I spent more time in my Bible in 2 weeks than I did in my whole life of being Catholic. So it was a wonderful experience. That was step 2. Step 3 was my daughter, Marissa. Making the amazing decision to be baptized as a child of God. Marissa's faith helped strengthen mine. And so I started studying what it meant to be baptized, really baptized, not water poured over your head when you don't know what you're doing. So I never underestimate the power your faith can have on people around you. It's amazing because honestly, just the way I saw her flourishing and the way I saw how she loved God, it inspired me. So we were baptized on the same day, and I became a different person that day. God was there. And now I have a relationship with him. Because I was different. I was one way, then I was another. And it was amazing. It was a beautiful day. My wife was crying, and it was a great day. It was so wonderful. And you really do. You become a different person. It is so amazing. Step 4. This might be a little short. Sorry, it's my first one, so I'm coming. Step 4. We moved to Indiana, to Kokomo, place I'd never heard of. But we found our wonderful church family. We love this church. It's such a welcoming environment. Everybody's so nice. We started getting involved a lot more. First, helping out with Pathfinders with Ginger. Adventurers, going Sabbath school. My wife's teaching Sabbath school now, singing, going on campouts. Now, I'm an elder. 20-year-old me, if you'd have told me I was going to be an elder in a church when I got older, that would have been a funny joke. I would have probably started laughing at you when I was 20 years old. But here I am. And the Lord uses damaged people a lot. And there was a lot of my life that was not good. And the reason I chose Saul in our sermon today was because Saul was not a good person for a long time. He thought he was doing God's work. And it took Jesus blinding him and giving him his sight back to bring him back and let him learn what it truly meant to follow the path. And throughout the Bible, God uses damaged people all the time. And I was damaged. I was broken. So the Lord, he showed me infinite patience. He just waited for me to come to him. It wasn't a big event. It was just slowly, over time. He was so patient with me. And he waited for me to see the light. And I didn't know it back then, but God blessed my broken road, because that's what it is sometimes. It's broken. It's not always right straight to him. It's he's there, he's not. He's there, he's not. He's always there. And he's always looking out for you. And he lit my way back to him, like the prodigal son returning home. I'm sorry that's so short, but that's what that's all I came up with. Ready for our closing here?